Shidari Fuji Shime from the Shime no Kata, Inazuma from the Shinyo no Maki, and Nodo Hikui from the Atemiwaza. These are all related techniques, so I'm putting together in this video. Nodo Hikui is a Atemiwaza attack to the part of the very base of the throat. It's where the collarbones come together, the top of the sternum, have that nice little divot. Atemiwaza going right in there. Inazuma, the technique is you're just reinforcing your fingers, putting it into that spot. You're going to drive in as deeply as you can and then dig down behind the chest plate. I usually do this from kumikata. I start in kumikata, and then I take my hand off the lapel and I go into the throat. I'm pulling and pushing. I go in, down, and take somebody down to the ground. You can even continue with that on the ground now that you have some counter pressure. Shidari Fuji Shime, we're going to do the same thing, but you're going to use your big toe. How do I get there? Usually get there, we set it up from a failed tomenage, just like Sankaku Gatami. I go in for my throw, I lift my leg up, I slide my base leg underneath, get up, but it failed. They squatted out, or for whatever reason, maybe they came up, but I couldn't get them over, and they came back down. And I'm in this position. I still have kumikata, or maybe both lapels. In any event, I have one side lapel on each side, and I have a foot up for counter pressure going both directions. Now, there's a couple of ways to get where I need to go. Where I want to end up is I need my big toe in the throat, and my other foot checking the hip. Because if I just have this, people can walk around, move around. I need to prevent them from being able to move. Theoretically, you can even kind of push to the inside of the knee, but I really like to check the hip. Now, you can get there several ways. I see some people go from here, they slide the toe up to the throat, and then check the hip. Some people keep checking the hip and lift the other foot all the way up and go for that choke. I actually like to put my other foot up so I have the hips on both sides and now I have an option on which way I want to go. This is partly going to depend on how they come down. Maybe I threw them and they fell to one side and they're actually pushing all their weight on my leg and I can't extend that, so I'm going to have to use my other leg to come up. So it's going to vary a little bit depending on your situation. However you get there, you need to end up with the toe in the throat, Nodo Hikui, checking the hip, and counter pressure. And I say choke because it is a choke. I'm cutting off the air supply, not the blood supply. I've seen a nice variation of this one. Hans Ingebretsen Sensei will use the side of his foot instead of the toe, which makes a lot of sense to me. You can actually kind of get a half a strangle out of that. Instead of going for the throat with my toe, turn my foot, I use the blade of the foot. You can either go straight into the trachea or kind of push the head to the side, and this blade and the heel cutting off the carotid on one side, so you get half a strangle cutting off that blood flow. Now, my understanding of this technique traditionally, and I have never done this on anybody, is that it's actually not so much a choke as a kick right through the throat. Which makes a little bit more sense to me because even if I set this up perfectly, it's hard for me to imagine that I could choke somebody long enough for them to lose consciousness before they could get out of this or move around that technique, because it takes so long to choke somebody as opposed to strangling them. So it makes sense that once you're here, they're just kicking through. Now we can't do that in class, and you're not going to even do that in competition. This is a self-defense or combative technique, but that's essentially what it is. Set it up, set up the choke, and then kick through the throat, which makes even more sense when you use the variation we're using the blade. Go right in and just doing a nice side kick right through the neck with counter pressure on the lapel. Right? Like for us, a basic setup, get in there, set it up, just pull and press until someone taps or until they cough. I often hear people cough on this one. I've never seen anyone vomit before. I've heard that it happens, so just be careful. Don't need to put that much pressure on, and if it's happening to you, just tap. And again, Inazuma is that same spot, just from standing, and I'm using my fingers instead of my toe. And I'm going to reinforce them because one finger might not be enough to all that pressure against the body. So put one on top of the other, kind of like you're crossing your fingers, so I'm not quite that deep. right in as deeply as you can, reach behind the breastplate and push down. And I'm going to actually use that to take them all the way down to the ground. You can call it a throw if you want. It's more of a takedown, I guess. Come in, go in, Inazuma, lightning or electric touch. Got some little bit of counter pressure with the throat, with the gi. If you want, you can even grab the back of the head. Usually I'm just in kumikata, go to the throat, pull in deep, take them down to the ground, and you've still got the counter pressure with the ground now, and the lapel kind of pulling and pushing. That's usually going to be enough for someone to tap at that point. Or if you're going into a self-defense situation, and that's not enough, or they can turn their head and they get out of it. I got them out of the ground, and I'm in a good position at this point to do some groundwork from there. So Shidari Fuji from the Shime, Inazuma from the Shinyo, and Nodo Hikui from the Temiwaza. Nodo Hikui is Temiwaza attacking this position.